Let's talk more about the budget now. Get reaction from Advocate Stefanie Fick from the organisation Undoing Tax Abuse. A very good evening to you, Advocate. I'm sure you've not missed the fact that one of your main causes, e-tolls, which basically is what gave rise to oUTA becoming a mainstream organisation, that did not get much of a mention in this budget.
No, it didn't. What is heartwarming is that Sanral is getting some money in order to continue with the infrastructure built, because, you know, a lot of people say if people don't pay e-tolls, how are we going to build our roads? This is how they do get funding from the fiscus. But I do think that the whole e-toll financing thing was already covered in the midterm budget statement. And we know that the national government is going to provide 23.7 billion rand, and then 30% needs to come from the Gauteng province. E-tolls is dead, but they should switch off the e-tolls now, because people are now in limbo. Every time we hear there's an answer. I think the Premier again said, you know what, there's an end to e-tolls, but yet, you know, people still get bills and so forth. You know, stuff hanging in the air in between is not good for social cohesion. So, you know, Sanral needs to declare the toll roads non-tolled roads so that we can move on.
And I was speaking just yesterday to the Gauteng Premier, Panyaza Lesufi, and he was saying one of the things that they're still ironing out is whether people who did comply with the e-toll system and paid will be refunded, because he was saying in the interest of fairness, it would appear that those people should get money back. But I wonder if it's even feasible to give people back all the money they paid, a fraction. How do you even work that out?
And just adding to that problem is, for example, your rental companies, you know, added that to the bill, so the customer paid for it. It didn't come out of their pocket, so they will have to go back to their customers. So from a practical point of view, it just seems that, you know, it's a big hill to climb, and whether it will be a practical solution. You know, it's a good idea. I mean, e-tolls shouldn't have been come into existence. That is what the whole fight was about, but people had a choice. To, you know, either pay. It was legislation, so they had to pay. The only problem is that it was legislation. It's not as if the government, you know, let them pay something that was unlawful, although we argued that the whole scheme was unlawful. So it is a sticky situation. I think the biggest problem is just practically how they're going to do this.
And funding the money in a province such as Gauteng, I mean, government repeatedly says that, you know, its purse strings are tighter and tighter with each budget. Gauteng was saying, not Gauteng was saying, but the Premier was saying to us just last night that they also now need to figure out how in the province they're going to pull funds in order to pay their bits, because there is the 70-30 split between national and provincial government.
Yeah, I just hope that they are not going to come back to the taxpayer or the motorist in Gauteng to pay this. We had this discussion before, is that we actually question why Gauteng has to pay the 30%. We've just heard Sanral gets their money from the fiscus. The Sanral deferred part is really a small percentage of Sanral's road surface. In other words, you know, they were still thinking of, when the scheme was started, was thinking of getting 35% of their income from 1% of road surface. So the question is still, what did you do with the funds that was allocated? You know, why do we have to pay 30%? Yes, we don't. Everybody pays for upgrades in KwaZulu-Natal or some of the other toll roads. So why should Gauteng be punished for a very small piece of road? So, but be that as it may, the hope is just, and I think we'll keep an eye on that, is that they don't punish yet again the Gauteng motorists. We are the economic hub. I think we do support the whole of South Africa. You know, we all support one another, but Gauteng is a big supporter. So, you know, give us some leeway.
Let me ask you then about electricity. We've heard about incentives for households and businesses who get the solar situation going. excuse me, just recovering from the cold, who get more solar from the 1st of March. There'll be those tax incentives, about 25% for households. You can claim that back basically as an incentive based on what you paid for the solar panels themselves. It will not extend to inverters and some of the other smaller systems that people have had installed in their homes, especially since the worsting of load shedding. Do you get the sense then, based on what Minister Godongwana said today, that the country is finally marching in the right direction on the issue of the energy crisis?
I think so. I mean, there's the energy plan. And let's not have the whole debate about the state of disaster. Hopefully we can concentrate the state of disaster, on KwaZulu-Natal and places where there were floods and that they're really, really struggling. But yes, I think what we are seeing at least is an attempt to say that we are moving in the right direction, renewables, trying to get more energy on our grid. Whether 25% or 15,000 Rand is enough in the bigger scheme of things, I mean, we can debate that. What is encouraging is that we must remember these are people, this is for people that can afford solar. There are still communities without electricity. So we need to look at the availability of electricity so that electricity is made available for everybody and all communities, and that we start looking at free basic electricity in a local government, giving an incentive and giving people, some free electricity if you qualify. And these are the goals that I think we need to move towards. So are we moving towards that? Proof is in the pudding. Let's see. Talking about it is always, lekker and good news, but it is in the implementation. And I think as we see the implementation plan of Eskom coming to fruition, we will know that we are indeed on the road to recovery.
But you make a good point there about how, based on the structure currently, in terms of the introduction of renewables and more solar dependence from both a business and household perspective, getting off the grid or being least affected by load shedding is still determined by one's socio-economic standing. The more money your household makes, the more likely you will suffer less of a frustration, right? But also, what is happening with this plan, am I right to say that in part, government and Eskom are now relying on us, the citizens, to basically come to their rescue within this crisis?
You can either take that as a positive and a negative, because again, government has created the situation. The energy crisis is 15 years in the making. They knew that this is coming. Medupi and Kusile was started in order to try and alleviate this energy problem, and look what happened there: corruption, and we still don't have all of it online. So it is, again, it's sort of, on the one hand, shows the inability of government to make sure that these things are dealt with. But on the other hand, I think public participation, transparency is extremely important if we are going to, start to eradicate corruption and, all the maladministration and so forth. So I do think it's a good sign that they do rely on support from their citizens. And by giving some incentives to taxpayers, that is, responsible for the income of government. But we need to be realistic, and that government needs to work hard to get Eskom at a point where it can supply enough electricity, which means we need to get renewables. Whether you agree with that or not, we need to make more energy available, more electricity available. Maintenance needs to be looked at. So all of that, if what they are saying, if they're going to do that, I really think that there's a light at the end of the tunnel, which hopefully include to also uplift communities that can't afford solar.
Advocate Stefanie Fick from the organisation Undoing Tax Abuse. Good to speak to you as always. Thank you for your time.